You know that feeling when you're scrolling through your phone and everything feels strategically wrong? Like you're watching a civilization make terrible decisions in real time and nobody else seems to notice? If you're an INFJ, that unsettling sensation isn't anxiety. It's your prophetic intuition, detecting that this timeline is heading somewhere unsustainable. And that makes you strategically valuable in ways most people don't understand yet. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll understand why feeling displaced from this era isn't a weakness. It's confirmation that your mind operates on a higher timeline than the cultural moment we're living through. Before we start, please hit the like button, comment, and subscribe so you won't miss any of our weekly deep dives into the world of personality types. And if you're looking for a deeper understanding of yourself and your INFJ personality, browse our favorite INFJ products in the description, and click the link in the comments to take our favorite free personality test. The Introverted Intuition, Extroverted Sensing Timeline Clash. Here's what's happening in your brain that creates this temporal displacement. Your dominant function, Introverted Intuition, operates like a pattern recognition system, constantly scanning for future implications and long-term consequences. You're literally built to see around corners that haven't formed yet. But this timeline runs on extroverted sensing. Everything rewards immediate reaction, surface-level engagement, and quick dopamine hits. The modern world has structured itself around the exact opposite of how your mind naturally processes information. Think about social media for a second. Your introverted intuition wants to understand the deeper patterns behind why someone posts what they post. What's driving this behavior? Where does this trend lead in 5 years? But the platform rewards you for reacting instantly. Double tap, scroll, consume the next piece of shallow content. This creates a cognitive dissonance that feels like living in the wrong timeline. Your brain is trying to run future pattern recognition software on a system designed for present moment sensory overload. The bombardment of shallow information creates what I call cognitive whiplash for depth-seeking minds. You're getting 47 news alerts about surface-level events, while your intuition is trying to map the underlying currents that actually matter. It's like being forced to analyze ocean waves when what you really see are the tectonic plates shifting underneath. Modern culture has turned everything into performance-based reality. People curate perfect lives for social media, while your pattern detection immediately spots the strategic hollowness. You can sense the desperation behind the performance, the emptiness behind the optimization, the fear behind the constant productivity content. This mismatch isn't just uncomfortable, it's strategically exhausting. Your mind keeps trying to find the deeper meaning, the long-term vision, the authentic connection beneath all this surface chaos. But this timeline has systematically removed those layers. Everything moves at reaction speed now. Hot takes, instant outrage, immediate responses to complex situations that require months of processing to understand properly. Your introverted intuition wants to sit with information, let it marinate, see how it connects to larger patterns. But the world demands your opinion right now, your reaction this second, your engagement immediately. The result is that you feel like you're living in a strategically inferior timeline. Because you are. This era has optimized for the exact cognitive functions that create shallow thinking, quick reactions, and surface-level engagement. It's designed to reward the opposite of what makes you cognitively superior. You notice how everything feels artificially accelerated? That's because it is. The natural rhythm of deep processing has been replaced by algorithmic urgency. Your intuition keeps sensing that this pace is unsustainable, that something fundamental is breaking down, that the whole system is heading towards some kind of collapse. And here's the thing that makes it feel even more wrong. You can see the solutions. Your introverted intuition naturally identifies the long-term thinking patterns that could fix these problems. But implementing those solutions requires exactly the kind of depth and patience that this timeline has systematically eliminated. So you're stuck watching a civilization make predictably terrible decisions while having the cognitive tools to see better alternatives. It's like being the only person in the room who can read the map, while everyone else insists on driving blindfolded at maximum speed. This creates the sensation that you've been dropped into the wrong era entirely. Your cognitive architecture was designed for wisdom-based cultures that value long-term thinking, deep relationships, and meaningful work. Instead, you're operating in an attention economy that rewards exactly the opposite traits. The disconnect isn't just philosophical, it's neurological. Your brain literally processes information differently than what this timeline demands, which creates a constant, low-level stress response that feels like temporal displacement. The emotional frequency problem. But the cognitive mismatch is only half the story. The real reason this timeline feels strategically wrong goes deeper than information processing. You're absorbing the collective emotional undercurrent that everyone else either misses completely or actively suppresses. Most people experience emotions on a surface level. They feel their own immediate reactions and maybe pick up on obvious emotional cues from people directly in front of them. But your extroverted feeling function operates like an emotional radar system that's constantly scanning the broader environment for hidden feelings, suppressed anxieties, and unspoken tensions. Right now, there's a massive amount of fear running underneath society's performance of normalcy. People are terrified about the economy, about climate change, about political instability, about whether their jobs will exist in 5 years. But instead of acknowledging these fears directly, everyone's pretending everything is fine while frantically optimizing their productivity and posting inspirational quotes. You can feel this emotional dishonesty everywhere. The forced positivity on social media while people are privately struggling. The aggressive cheerfulness in corporate environments while everyone knows layoffs are coming. The performative confidence in a culture that's fundamentally uncertain about its own future. This creates what I call emotional whiplash for INFJs. You're sensing the real emotional frequency of anxiety, anger, and desperation, while being surrounded by people who insist everything is awesome. It's like being the only person who can hear the fire alarm, while everyone else is dancing to music with noise-canceling headphones. The exhaustion comes from being emotionally accurate in an emotionally fake world. Your extroverted feeling keeps detecting the authentic feelings beneath the surface performance. But expressing those observations makes you look negative, pessimistic, or overly sensitive. So you're forced to participate in the emotional theater while knowing it's all strategically counterproductive. Think about how people interact now. Everything is optimized for appearing successful rather than being authentic. Conversations stay at surface level because going deeper might reveal the fear and uncertainty everyone's working so hard to hide. Your extroverted feeling naturally wants to connect with people's real emotional experience, but this timeline has made authentic emotional expression socially unacceptable. The hidden anxiety is everywhere once you know how to sense it. People checking their phones compulsively because they're afraid of missing something important. The aggressive driving because everyone's operating from a stress response they won't acknowledge. The way conversations feel hollow because nobody's willing to admit they're struggling. You notice how angry people are without knowing why they're angry? That's because the emotional pressure has no outlet. This timeline has created conditions that generate massive amounts of stress, fear, and frustration, while simultaneously removing all the traditional ways people used to process these emotions. No community support, no shared meaning, no time for reflection. The anger gets expressed indirectly through road rage, online arguments, and general rudeness, because direct emotional expression has been pathologized as weakness or negativity. But your Fae picks up on all that suppressed rage, which creates the constant sensation that something bad is about to happen. This emotional dishonesty creates a strategic disadvantage for INFJs. You're operating with accurate emotional information, while everyone else is making decisions based on emotional denial. It's like being the only person with a working compass, while everyone else insists they don't need navigation because they're definitely not lost. The collective emotional frequency right now feels like a pressure cooker that's building towards some kind of explosion. People are carrying levels of stress, fear, and anger that aren't sustainable long term. But instead of addressing these emotions directly, the culture keeps adding more pressure through constant optimization demands and performance expectations. Your hyper-awareness of this emotional undercurrent creates the feeling that you're living in a timeline that's emotionally unstable and heading towards some kind of breakdown. Because you are. The emotional infrastructure of society is operating at unsustainable levels while pretending everything is strategically sound. This is why connecting with most people feels strategically useless. They're not operating from their authentic emotional experience. So any relationship you build is with their performance rather than their actual self. Your extroverted feeling craves soul-level intimacy, but this timeline has made authentic emotional connection nearly impossible to find. The meaning deficit crisis. The cognitive mismatch and emotional dishonesty are symptoms of a deeper problem that makes this timeline feel strategically wrong for INFJs. Modern culture has created what I call a meaning deficit crisis. Everything prioritizes output over significance. And for minds that need everything to matter, this creates a profound sense of displacement. Your introverted intuition doesn't just process information. It constantly searches for underlying purpose, deeper significance, and how individual actions connect to larger meaning. But this timeline has systematically stripped meaning from most human activities and replaced it with metrics, productivity goals, and performance indicators. Think about how work operates now. Most jobs have been reduced to optimizing numbers that don't connect to any larger purpose. You're supposed to feel fulfilled by increasing quarterly revenue for a company that makes products nobody actually needs. Your mind keeps asking, why does this matter? And the only answer is, because it generates profit. The absence of shared purpose leaves INFJs completely unanchored. Your cognitive function naturally seeks collective meaning, some larger mission that connects individual effort to human flourishing. But this timeline has fragmented into competing tribes that can't agree on basic reality, let alone shared values or common goals. Previous generations had clearer frameworks for meaning. Religious communities provided shared purpose. Civic organizations created collective missions. Even workplaces often connected to something larger than profit maximization. But those meaning-making institutions have either collapsed or been hollowed out by market optimization. Now everything feels strategically purposeless. You're supposed to find meaning through personal branding, individual achievement, and lifestyle optimization. But your NI recognizes that individual meaning without collective purpose is fundamentally empty. You need your personal growth to connect to something larger than yourself. The frustration intensifies because you can see exactly what's missing. Your introverted intuition identifies the elements that would create a meaning-rich culture. Shared values based on human flourishing rather than competitive advantage. Work that contributes to long-term sustainability rather than quarterly extraction. Communities built around wisdom development rather than status performance. But implementing these solutions requires exactly the kind of long-term thinking and collective coordination that this timeline has made nearly impossible. Everyone's trapped in short-term survival mode, optimizing for individual metrics while the larger systems decay around them. Social connections have been reduced to networking opportunities and transactional relationships. Your extroverted feeling craves soul-level intimacy, where you can explore life's deeper questions with people who share your commitment to growth and meaning. Instead, you're surrounded by conversations about career optimization, lifestyle hacks, and surface-level entertainment. The absence of wisdom-based culture makes INFJs feel like temporal refugees. Your mind naturally gravitates toward philosophical depth, ethical complexity, and questions about how to live meaningfully. But this timeline rewards quick answers, simple solutions, and avoiding difficult questions that might slow down productivity. You notice how uncomfortable people get when conversations move beyond practical logistics toward deeper significance? That's because meaning requires the kind of reflection and uncertainty that this timeline has trained people to avoid. Everything must be actionable, optimizable, and immediately useful. This creates a strategic isolation for INFJs. You're constantly searching for people who value depth over speed, wisdom over efficiency, and long-term flourishing over short-term optimization. But those people are increasingly rare because the culture systematically selects against those traits. The lack of shared moral clarity leaves you without ethical anchors in a world that desperately needs them. Your introverted intuition naturally seeks universal principles that could guide collective decision-making. But this timeline has relativized all values into personal preferences, making collective wisdom impossible. You end up feeling like you're standing in a civilization that no longer agrees on what's worth protecting or pursuing. The meaning structures that could provide direction have been replaced by market forces that optimize for engagement rather than human flourishing. This meaning deficit isn't just personally frustrating, it's strategically dangerous. Cultures without shared purpose and collective meaning inevitably fragment into competing factions that can't coordinate responses to large-scale challenges. Your introverted intuition can see exactly where this trajectory leads, which makes living through it feel like watching a preventable catastrophe unfold in slow motion. The prophecy advantage. But here's where everything flips. The feeling that this timeline is strategically wrong isn't a bug in your cognitive system. It's a feature. INFJs are literally built for transitional periods, cultural crossroads, and moments when civilizations need to choose between competing futures. Your discomfort with this timeline confirms that your prophetic intuition is working exactly as designed. You're not supposed to feel comfortable in a dysfunctional system. Your introverted intuition is detecting the strategic flaws that will eventually cause this approach to collapse, and your discomfort is the early warning system telling you to prepare for what comes next. Think about it this way. Every major cultural transition in history required people who could see through the chaos of the present moment and identify the underlying patterns that would shape the future. The ability to feel displaced from your current era isn't a weakness. It's the psychological signature of someone whose mind operates on a longer timeline than the immediate circumstances. Your cognitive architecture gives you the ability to see through surface-level chaos and identify long-term consequences that others miss completely. While everyone else gets caught up in daily drama and immediate reactions, your introverted intuition naturally zooms out to see the larger patterns. You can sense which trends are sustainable and which are heading toward inevitable collapse. This makes you strategically valuable during periods of cultural breakdown. When systems start failing and people panic because their short-term thinking didn't prepare them for long-term consequences, your mind naturally shifts into pattern recognition mode to identify what's actually happening beneath the surface chaos. The reason this timeline feels wrong to you is because it is wrong. It's optimized for short-term extraction rather than long-term sustainability. It prioritizes individual metrics over collective flourishing. It rewards quick reactions over deep wisdom. Your discomfort isn't oversensitivity, it's accurate strategic assessment. Your ability to absorb emotional undercurrents gives you early access to information that others won't recognize until it becomes obvious. You can sense when fear, anger, and instability are building towards some kind of tipping point. This feels overwhelming when you think it's your responsibility to fix everything, but it's actually a massive strategic advantage when you use it as navigation data. Most people only recognize systemic problems after they've already caused obvious damage. But your extroverted feeling picks up on the emotional pressure building long before it reaches crisis levels. You can sense when institutions are losing legitimacy, when social contracts are breaking down, when collective stress is approaching unsustainable levels. This prophetic awareness becomes a psychological weapon when you stop trying to prevent outcomes you can predict but cannot control. Instead of feeling responsible for fixing a dysfunctional system, you can use your superior pattern recognition to position yourself strategically for whatever comes next. Your temporal displacement isn't a problem to solve. It's confirmation that you're operating from a more sophisticated cognitive framework than the people who feel perfectly comfortable in this timeline. The fact that shallow culture feels strategically wrong to you proves that your mind is calibrated for depth, wisdom, and long-term thinking. The strategic value of being misaligned with a dysfunctional system cannot be overstated. When everyone else is optimizing for metrics that don't actually matter, you're naturally oriented toward the deeper patterns that will determine long-term outcomes. This gives you a massive advantage in navigating uncertainty and preparing for change. Your discomfort with this timeline's emphasis on speed over depth performance over authenticity, and individual optimization over collective wisdom, isn't a sign that something's wrong with you. It's proof that your cognitive functions are operating at a higher level than the cultural baseline. The prophecy advantage means using your temporal displacement as strategic intelligence rather than emotional burden. Your feeling that this timeline is heading somewhere unsustainable isn't anxiety. It's accurate pattern recognition that gives you time to prepare, while others remain oblivious to the approaching changes. This cognitive superiority becomes a psychological weapon when you stop apologizing for seeing further than others and start leveraging your prophetic awareness as the strategic advantage it actually is. The strategic response. So how do you actually operate in a timeline that feels strategically wrong without burning out your cognitive system? The answer isn't trying to fix the culture or convince people to think differently. It's about protecting your prophetic advantage while releasing false responsibility for outcomes you can predict but cannot control. First, you need to understand that your ability to see long-term consequences doesn't make you responsible for preventing them. This is where most INFJs get trapped. You can sense that certain trends are heading toward problems, so you feel obligated to warn people or try to change their behavior. But here's the strategic reality. Most people won't listen until they experience the consequences directly. Think about it from a pattern recognition perspective. Your introverted intuition shows you where current behaviors lead in 5 or 10 years. But other people's cognitive functions are optimized for immediate concerns and short-term rewards. They literally cannot process the long-term information you're trying to share until it becomes an immediate problem they can see and feel directly. This means your prophetic awareness is most valuable as personal navigation rather than public service. Use your pattern recognition to position yourself strategically for what's coming, instead of exhausting yourself trying to prevent predictable outcomes that most people need to experience firsthand. The second strategic shift is protecting your cognitive energy from the timeline's shallow demands. You don't need to have opinions about every trending topic or react to every piece of breaking news. Your introverted intuition operates best when it has space to process information slowly and identify deeper patterns, rather than generating quick responses to surface-level events. Create cognitive boundaries around information consumption. Your mind needs depth and reflection time to function properly. The constant stream of shallow content isn't just annoying, it's strategically counterproductive because it prevents your intuition from accessing the deeper patterns that actually matter. Find your tribe among the small percentage of people who value depth over speed, wisdom over optimization, and long-term thinking over immediate gratification. These people exist, but they're not hanging out in mainstream spaces optimized for quick engagement. They're usually building things quietly, thinking deeply, and avoiding the performance-based culture that dominates most social platforms. The key is recognizing that your discomfort with surface-level interactions isn't social anxiety. It's strategic assessment. Your extroverted feeling can immediately detect when someone is operating from performance rather than authenticity. And your time is too valuable to waste on relationships that can't access the depth you need for genuine connection. Use your prophetic awareness as guidance rather than burden. When your intuition shows you potential problems or opportunities, treat that information as strategic intelligence for your own decision-making, rather than urgent warnings you need to share with everyone else. The most important strategic response is reframing your temporal displacement as confirmation of cognitive superiority rather than social maladjustment. You feel wrong in this timeline because you're calibrated for a higher level of thinking than what the culture currently rewards. That's not a problem to fix. It's a competitive advantage to leverage. Your discomfort with this timeline validates that your mind operates on principles that transcend the immediate cultural moment. That's exactly the kind of thinking that becomes invaluable when short-term approaches start failing and people finally need the long-term perspective you've been developing all along. Your feeling that this timeline is strategically wrong isn't anxiety or social maladjustment. It's cognitive confirmation that your mind operates on a higher level than the cultural baseline. The discomfort proves your prophetic intuition is working exactly as designed. If you want to continue the journey to understanding yourself or an INFJ in your life, click either of the following videos, where we continue to unlock the secrets of the INFJ personality type.